Hello, BookTube. Well, as I mentioned, it's the beginning of a new month, and that is a call on BookTube for people to make videos with TBRs of what they're going to read in the upcoming month. And I want to be part of that fun, but what I'm going to read in the upcoming month, and what the books from the upcoming month that I've already read, are too many to make a video. so rather than talking about my own TBR, what I tend to do on this channel is a TBR BY, a to be read by you, where I list 10 books that I think are well worth your time for the upcoming month. I don't have precise publication dates for them, but they will be. All of these books will be appearing in October, and I'm still reading a ton of October books, as you know, if you're watching this channel regularly. I'm still reading a ton of October books, but these I have read, and I want to recommend them. So I've got a list, and unlike with my wrap-up, with this one I thought maybe I'd give you a little break and actually show you a couple of books. So I grabbed a few of them so that I can show you some, including the first one, which is something we've seen on this channel before. It is enormous. It is incredible. It is edited by Leslie Klinger, and it is the classic crime novels of the 1920s. It's this beautiful thing. Just an enormous thing that is a collection of short crime novels from the 1920s that are chosen and annotated to show the beginnings of the genre, to show the beginnings of a whole new way of writing crime fiction that was born in America in the 1920s. This is a Megillah of a thing. It's $40. It weighs 500 pounds. You can't carry it with you to work. You can't carry it on the subway. You have to read it at home. And all those things ordinarily work against it for me, but it was tremendous. Just tremendously good. And the other one, the next one, is also a big collection. We've also seen it on this channel. In fact, I think I also have it here. Yes, it's this thing. It's the Big Book of Female Detectives, edited by the great Otto Penzler. Leslie Klinger and Otto Penzler are great editors, both of them. And this one is also huge. This is 800 pages long of female detectives throughout the history of the mystery genre. And just wonderfully, wonderfully done. Just wonderfully chosen. Otto Penzler chooses things like a virtuoso. So we'll start off our October TBR BY with two enormous endeavors, two enormous anthologies that I'm recommending, even though I know your reading time is very limited. I'm recommending them because they're both extremely well done, and also because, like the best anthologies, you can jump in and out of them. You can get, if you get this Big Book of Female Detectives, you're going to be reading in it for years. So its enormous price tag will even itself out. Same thing with crime novels in the 1920s. If you get this volume for $40, God help us, or whatever discounted price you can get, if you read one novel a year, that will do. And the introduction is incredible. The supporting materials are incredible. That's why I'm recommending these things, even though they're enormous outlays of time, because you can parlay the time over months or years even. Then the next one is a romance novel. I think we saw it on this channel. It's The First Earl I See Tonight by Anna Bennett. It's a volume in the Debutante Diaries series, and this author, I swear, I love her more with every book. So I heartily recommend it if you're interested in a light Regency romance with really popping dialogue. Then I heartily recommend this. And like with my wrap up, I will list all of these things down below, so you don't need to be pausing the video. Then the next one, I don't know that I have it here. I have it, but I don't think I have it as one of my visual aids. It's enormous. It's another huge. You got to expect that. In the autumn, all the books get bigger. I mean, it's Max Hastings' one-volume history of Vietnam, of the Vietnam War. Max Hastings is one of the greatest living military historians in our time. And this, I don't even know what that is. I think it's a land speeder from Star Wars. Someone's out hunting Jawas. That wasn't a car. It kept going up and down, up and down. Anyway, one way or another. The Max Hastings is I mean, he's written a whole bookcase full of books. He's one of our most prolific and extremely good military historians working today. And this is his long-promised one-volume big book on the Vietnam War. Those of you who are familiar with his approach to telling history will know what to expect here. He is very much primary sources. He is very much Grunt's eye view of things. He tends to shy away from sweeping theoretical observations in favor of just telling the details of the story. And he's not afraid of those details being dark and savage. So this is a visceral book, but I thought it was amazingly good. It now answers the question that I get asked quite often: is what is a 1-volume book for Vietnam? I have for decades recommended Stanley Karnow's book called Vietnam, and now I have not so much a replacement as a bookend for that, because now I can also recommend Max Hastings. And Stanley Karnow's book I don't think is in print anymore, and Max Hastings' book will be in bookstores for Christmas. So it's a wholehearted recommendation. It's not an easy book to read. But then the next book we have is a smaller press. You might have to order it at your bookstore, but it is an easy book to read. It's from Lyons Press. And it's called Flirting with Mermaids. It's a memoir by John Kreschmer of his time working in all kinds of boats, in all kinds of weather, in all kinds of capacities, as a mail tender carrier and a crew member, and it's a classic collection of old salt yarns in the modern era. He is a contemporary old salt. So if you like that sort of thing, then you can't miss this book. It is funny and irreverent and wise, even in some ways. Just an amazing reading experience. I was delighted with it from start to finish. But I don't think I was delighted just because I too have spent a lot of time on the open ocean. I think you would be anyway. Then let's see. The next one is okay. The next one is by David Shields, an author with whom I have an extremely up and down relationship, to put it mildly. And if considering the up and down relationship that I have with this author, if you had told me that he was going to write a Trump book, I would say, okay, well, that's going to be a down part of the up and down spectrum. If there's anything that he's going to be more obnoxious on than Trump, I don't know what it would be. But David Shields' new book is a Trump book. It is Nobody Hates Trump More Than Trump. Now, I saw the title in a catalog and thought that is completely objectively not true. I know it's nice, it's very comforting on a pop psychology level to think this man hates himself, but he does not. He absolutely does not. He loves himself, and that is the only constant love in his life. It never dims, it never questions itself. There are no 3 o'clock in the morning moments. There are not at all. This is a fully functioning sociopath. So the title of David Shields' book is just objectively wrong. But the book itself, it's amazingly good. It's an amazing... I don't want to call it a psychological portrait, because Shields doesn't have any direct access to Donald Trump, and also a psychological portrait in the sense that we understand it clinically is not possible with Donald Trump, because he is not a real person. But rather, it's a psychological portrait of our perception of him, and which is a typical meta approach that David Shields always takes, and it's done astonishingly well in this case. I don't know how to recommend the book in terms of political fervency. I think it would be fascinating even to a Trump supporter. There are Trump supporters in the world, and I think even a Trump supporter would find it fascinating to read, but I believe that the book is mostly written out of alarm and even a little hatred. So it's probably for the huge majority, the 90% majority of the world that feels those emotions already for this particular person. But one way or another, you can almost take Trump out of the book completely. He is almost not involved in the book. And it would still be fascinating. And boy, oh boy, does the subject call out David Shields' best writing. Boy, oh boy. It was just a total surprise to me. I was expecting it to be dismissible, and it wasn't. It isn't dismissible at all. If Fear by Bob Woodward was the Trump book from September to read, then Nobody Hates Trump More Than Trump is, did I get that right? Yes, is the Trump book to read in October. I know some of you might be thinking that goes to Full Disclosure by Stormy Daniels, but no, this is even better. Although I'll have to talk, it's not on this list, but I'll have to talk at some point about Full Disclosure, because it also was a huge surprise to me. But our next book is Beyond Weird by Philip Ball. I think it comes out at the end of October, and it is a familiar thing on this channel. We have seen other books like it. It is a soup to nuts layman's kitchen tour of the current state of understanding of quantum mechanics, of quantum theory. The unbelievable strangeness of quantum theory is walked through here. Philip Ball is an extremely good educator. He does not talk down, but he also does not go too fast. So if you, like me, are interested in books like that about quantum field, theory, about quantum mechanics and how they work and how counterintuitive they are, this is the book to read for the whole year. This is just fantastically done. Then the next one is I Think, Therefore I Draw, by Daniel Klein and David Cathcart. And it is, on the surface, a kind of pop psychology, pop philosophy look at what newspaper comics, New Yorker-style comics, tell us about. Do I have it here? No, I don't. Tell us about life and the universe and all that. But really, for me, it does that, and it's a little cutesy-poo when it does that. But for me, what I loved about it was reading these two as they think about cartoons, about comics, reading their insights on things like New Yorker cartoons, and saying and seeing over and over again, what they see that you didn't. I just found that consistently fascinating. I have, as you will find later in this TBR BY, I have a lifelong love affair with New Yorker cartoons. And this book was just catnip for that. So if you like that sort of thing, if you like, it's lavishly illustrated, so you don't need to take the author's word for anything. They show you what they're talking about. But if you, like me, like New Yorker cartoons, for instance, it doesn't have to be New Yorker cartoons, but if you like that sort of thing, you're going to love this book. It's a meditation on that weird kind of art form. Then the next one is a series that you will see in bookstores. It is a standard, regular item of the publishing season. The Best American series that started out with Best American Short Stories. Now it's Best American Non-Required Reading and Best American Mystery and Best American Science Writing and Nature Writing and a billion other things. And they vary in quality, of course, because you have the institutional editors that deal with each volume, but you also have guest editors for every volume now. And that causes variations in quality according to different people's ideas and schedules. Some guest editors over the years have been notoriously so busy that they couldn't really participate, even though their name was going to be in 2-inch type on the cover. Others participated a little too much. Some of them wanted to anthologize quite a few of their own stories. The institutional editor has to watch out for all of that. Every once in a while, once a year at least regularly, one of the books in the series, you never can tell what it will be, is a kind of gem. And this year it's the Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy, where the guest editor is N.K. Jemison. So it's probably not a surprise that it's a superlative volume. And it is. It is a superlative volume. If you don't read much science fiction short stories, I myself read religiously. I think 4 ongoing periodicals that come out either monthly or bi-monthly. But if you don't, if you mean to, but you never get around to it, because unlike me, you don't just read, you have a real life and friends and family and whatnot, then these volumes, not just for science fiction, but for any other kind of genre, really serve as wonderful one-stop moments to catch up on some of the basics, some of the big standout stuff. And in this case, with this volume's 2018 Science Fiction and Fantasy, it's more than just utilitarian. They're actually beautifully chosen. So I highly recommend the volume. And if I remember correctly, I haven't seen the finished copy, but if I remember correctly, the finished copy is also going to look wonderful, too. These are usually drab. The cover is just Best American whatever 2018 or, given year. I think the science fiction and fantasy one, very fittingly, has a science fiction fantasy type cover. If I remember correctly, that is planned. So it will jump out. These things usually have a cardboard standalone display in retail bookstores, at least in America. And they're all going to look the same except for this one, so it'll jump out at you. And of the 2018 Best of series, this is really the best this year. I've read them all, most of them. I haven't read the food writing one, I don't think, but I've read most of them, and this is amazing. So I highly recommend it. Then we've got okay, here I do have a paperback from the great folks at Quirk Books. This is called Paperback Crush. And it is a survey. I got to show this to you. It's one of their survey volumes. They did one for horror novels. This is YA fiction for girls from the 80s and 90s. And believe it or not, they make this really work. They make it really work. Like with the horror novel volume, the thing is just, it not only is it full of memories, for those of you who were young girls in the 80s and 90s who were gobbling these books up, you're going to love this book. You're just going to love this book. It's going to be full of memories. But it's not just that. It's also, I was not. a young girl in the 80s and 90s, and yet I was enraptured with the book from beginning to end for the same reason as the horror novel one, Paperbacks from Hell, which is that how good the narrative is. The narrative is just so smart. It thinks of things that I was not thinking. It catches similarities and riffs and trends that I've sold these books. I've read some of them. I've studied them, and I didn't see them coming. It's just amazingly done. I really hope that Quirk's book just continues doing these books. I just hope they continue doing these books. Imagine them doing science fiction fantasy, a volume on science fiction and fantasy paperbacks. Oh my God, how wonderful would that be? And a million other things. So I wholeheartedly recommend the book no matter what you were in the 80s and 90s. And also, just as a parenthesis here, for those who might be new or for those who might be old to the channel and have forgotten, in addition to being an endless windbag about books, I am also the editor of a literary journal, an online literary journal called Open Letters Review. We have a bunch of great people on our masthead, including some great booktubers, present and past. And we run reviews. And I feel certain that somewhere out there, within the sound of my voice, is someone who was one of those girls. You're not anymore, you're a little older now, a little wiser, but I feel certain that someone watching this video was one of those girls and loved these books and could write a humdinger of a review of this volume. If you are that person, kindly sing out in the comments field or send me an email. Anyway, now that's on, we'll move on. Okay, the next one is, it's niche. It's another romance novel, but it's a romance novel that even romance fans tend not to see. Harlequin Romance has a number of different ongoing brands per month. They publish 100 books a month. And one of their brands is Harlequin Historical Novels. It's my favorite one, of course. I love their historical novels. They range all over time. And one of their historical novels for the month of October, I thought, they're all really good, but they're very short. They're in and out. They're meant to feed an itch rather than to blow you away. I don't think the Harlequin editors or their authors would object to that as a description. They're meant for you to curl up with and read. But there was one that's coming out in October. It's The Viscount's Runaway Wife by Laura Martin that really struck me as more than that. I really enjoyed it, in addition to just curling up and popping it down like popcorn. I thought it had resonances that were really good. It is the story of a man finding his wife after genuine trauma, instead of the kind of ginned-up trauma that short historical romance novels tend to provide. And the interaction between him and his wife as she recovers and discovers new aspects of herself, I thought was just... I don't want to be belittling the Harlequin historical line, because I really love them. But this book felt out of place, in a good way, among the other 3 historical novels that Harlequin did for the month of October. So those of you who are romance fans, historical romance fans, who maybe write these things off and go for the bigger, more lavish standalone romance novels that are published by other people, might want to find this volume and give it a try. I bet you will like it. The only caveat that I want to say is if you read it, if you make the trouble to find it, and you read it, and you like it, as I suspect you will, and you take a step back when you're done, and you think, boy, Harlequin historical novels are like this? That was tremendous. I have to stress, Harlequin historical novels are not usually like this. So don't get, Harlequin historicals are meant to be popcorn. This is not quite popcorn. So, don't hold those facts against either one. Then where are we going from here? Oh yes, another one I have a visual for. This is something I mentioned on this channel. It's by Steve Kornacki. It's The Red and the Blue. And this author claims that our current hyper-partisan, incredibly tribalized political atmosphere was born in the 1990s in the savage warfare between Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich. This is his first book, and I went into it skeptically because I think I know where the hyperpartisan stuff comes from in 2018, 2016, and I don't think it's the 1990s. I think it's social media. But he and I don't know that he completely convinced me, but boy oh boy, it doesn't matter. After 20 pages, I was having the ball reading it regardless of whether or not it convinced me. This is the best one-volume account of the politics of the 1990s that I've ever read by a long margin. It's terrific. So if you lived through that period, you have to read this book. You just have to. But if you didn't, if you're a 90s kid, you were born in the 90s and you don't remember this stuff, boy, oh boy, Kornacki writes just fantastic. I mean, not only did I love it when I was finished with the book, but I can't wait to read the rest of the books that he writes. So I highly, highly recommend it. Even if you think you're not a political book junkie, this author will hook you. You will keep reading. The next one is a biography. It's a biography of someone I can't stand. So it's an extra burden for the biographer, an extra hurdle for them to cross, and this author does it easily. The author is Sue Prideaux, and the book is I Am Dynamite. And I don't think I have it here. It's a new, upcoming October biography of Friedrich Nietzsche, who I think was an addlepated and clinically insane syphilis patient for most of his adult life. I think that explains why most of his writing is actually incomprehensible, but written in such a round and romantic and portentous terms that if you are a college undergraduate or a college undergraduate at heart, you can find all sorts of pseudo-profundity in all of Nietzsche's garbage books. And people have. In his own lifetime and ever since, they have found all sorts of pseudo-profundity in what he writes. And that has always irritated me about the man. I realized when I was reading this, I Am Dynamite is terrific as a biography. And I was abashed to remember as I was reading it that you don't hold the books against the man. You can still write a great biography of someone you can write a great biography of someone whose actual accomplishments don't interest me at all. Margot Fontaine, for instance, or Robert Caro's book about Robert Moses. I don't need to be interested in the person if the biographer is doing their job, and I Am Dynamite does the job. Oh my God, what a book! The next one is also a biography. We've seen it on this channel. It's by Jean Moorcroft Wilson, and it is a biography of the young Robert Graves, with an emphasis on Robert Graves as a World War I poet, and as a friend, and perhaps more than friend, with all the other World War I poets. And I have read many Graves biographies. There've been quite a few. He's a well-written, a well-covered literary figure. So I guess I went into this kind of skeptically, thinking, yes, you're throwing greater emphasis on his poems, but you're not really going to tell me anything I don't know. And I don't know that the book really does, but boy, oh boy, as with the Nietzsche book, it is written so well. It is so engaging. That I didn't mind. I didn't care at all. And another benefit that wasn't necessary, I've known Graves biographers who did not do this, another fringe benefit is that this author captures the broader time wonderfully. So this is not just a book about Robert Graves, it's really about the era, and a lot of Graves books cannot say that, but this was tremendously good at that. So I highly recommend it. If you're not interested in Robert Graves, I don't think this will capture you in quite the way that I Am Dynamite would capture you, even if you're not interested in Friedrich Nietzsche. But if you are, oh boy, I recommend it. And then the last one. The last one's going to take some doing to show you. It's going to take a little bit of work. Let's prepare here. The last book I want to recommend for October is enormous. I'll put my notebook away because I'm going to need both hands. It weighs 50 pounds. It is an enormous endeavor. It is the New Yorker Encyclopedia of Cartoons in 2 volumes, in a slipcase of 2 volumes. It is the New Yorker Encyclopedia of Cartoons. It's too heavy for me to hold up any longer, so I'm going to put it back down on the floor. But what it is, when you think of encyclopedia, you might be wondering, what on earth does that mean? Is it chronological? No, it's not. Instead, it is an encyclopedia arranged alphabetically of gags for New Yorker cartoons. So D will be Desert Island and divorce. F will be fox hunting. D will be dentist. S will be suicide. W will be Wall Street. C will be clown. And in the course of these pages, these glorious pages, you just get, for each encyclopedia entry, alphabetically, you get a whole slew of cartoons on that gimmick. So, as we mentioned, I am a big New Yorker cartoon fan, and this is an incredible production. Just, it's obvious. I mean, the lavishness of it. I think it's $100, something like that. It weighs 1,000,000 pounds, so it'd be hard for you to get it home from the bookstore. You're better off just ordering it online. But it is obviously geared as a gift. I mean, this is the type of thing that you give someone. And as such, if you know somebody who loves New Yorker cartoons, I gather there are people out there. I am not alone in my weird obsession with New Yorker cartoons. If you know somebody who loves them, this is one of the ultimate gifts to give them. Just so, but also, it's a ton of fun. It's just, it's a major undertaking because it's crippling to carry around, to put on your lap while you read. It's just crippling. but it definitely rounds out my list. And again, I will list all these things down below. It rounds out my list because you're not going to see a production like this for any other book this year. And it's tons of fun to go through. So there you go. That is an October 2018 TBR BY, to be read by you. Those are a few recommendations that I can make. I'm still feverishly reading October books. So, you know, my look back at October when November comes in about 15 minutes will doubtless have completely different books. But for the meantime, I wanted to recommend those books as a kind of, the philosophy behind my TBR BY is, what would I say to you if you and I were just sort of idly browsing the new release tables at the Strand bookstore in New York City? And something caught your eye? If one of these things catches your eye, this is what I would tell you of them. Because you can't have me there. I almost never am in company when I browse in new bookstores anymore. And I don't work in a bookstore information desk. These TBR BYs used to be what my customers would come to me for. They would come to the bookstore, to the information desk, and there would be two lines. One line would be for everybody else, and then one line would be, I'm waiting for Steve. I want to talk to Steve. And this is what we talked about, me and my customers. So, and I don't do that anymore. So this is the closest we come to that. These are books that I recommend for October if you're interested in their subjects, with the exception of well, let's look at the list. I think there was one on here that I would recommend anyway to anybody. No, this is an interest-driven list. I was thinking of How to Invent Anything by Ryan North, which is a book you can give to anybody. No matter what you're interested in, you will love that book. But that was September's look back. For October, none of the books on this list are actually that kind of book. So, you know, so take it accordingly. You have to be sort of interested in crime fiction to read an 800-page book on crime fiction, and so on and so forth. The same thing with the New Yorker cartoons, that sort of thing. But if you are, I will list all these things down below, and they have the Steve seal of approval. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.